Good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome to From the Nosebleeds. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'm Joey Gunnar here today with Andrew Mason. Mace, how you feeling today on this wonderful Friday?
I'm awake. I'm here. Feeling good. Good to be here.
Feeling good. Feeling good. Ready for this Broncos game this Sunday. Should be a really fun game to watch. Second time the Broncos are going to take on the Raiders this season. Looking for what should be hopefully a bigger win than we saw last time when the Broncos played the Raiders and it ended up being a 10-7 game. I know a lot of fans in Broncos country. I'm certainly hoping for a bigger win. But what should we expect going into this game? What are the big differences that we can see very clearly before kickoff even happens, before the weekend even starts? What are the differences between this weekend and what we saw a couple weeks ago when the Broncos last played the Raiders?
I mean, the Raiders, they've turned over 2/3 of their coordinators. They've changed offensive coordinator. They've changed special teams coordinator. Tom McMahon, who we all know from his time with the Broncos, a special teams coordinator, he's out. Chip Kelly, offensive coordinator, he's out. Greg Olsen, not the tight end turned Fox analyst Greg Olsen, the play caller, he's back for his third hitch as Raiders play caller. So we saw him call plays for them last week against Las Vegas. So that's really the big difference for the Raiders going forward. Are they going to try to push things more with Ashton Genty, get him more involved, to kind of center the offense a bit more around him? Because if you're the Raiders and you really want to structure this thing going forward, you need to start building this offense around Ashton Genty in a way that really they haven't tried to. I mean, I was talking with a couple of people about this earlier this week. Genty's the kind of running back that thrives the more you get him the ball, and I think the Raiders, they haven't yet come to the point that the Titans came to with Derrick Henry in the second year of his career. The thing, like for Derrick Henry, going way back, the first year and a half, it wasn't all that great. And then they realized we've just got to keep feeding him the rock. And then late in that second season, he had a breakout game on Thursday Night Football. And then he became the Derrick Henry that we've known pretty much ever since. And I think the Raiders, they've got to have that moment with Ashton Genty at some point that if you're going to have a back like him, you've got to keep feeding him the ball in the pass game, on the ground, up the middle. So I think I'm curious to see when the light bulb clicks on for the Raiders in that regard. Might it be this game? It's possible if the Broncos go into this game with their defensive line hamstrung a little bit, because, of course, we saw Zach Allen sit out practice Thursday with a calf issue, and we have not seen DJ Jones practice all week because of the ankle injury that he had last Sunday. We'll see if there's any clarity on both of those later on today, Joey. But if the Broncos end up playing this game without a couple of key defensive linemen, this may be the opportunity for the Raiders to try to push Genty a little bit more than they did last week, and that could be a big difference in how Las Vegas attacks this game compared to last month, when I think they really did throw too much caution to the winds and their passing game.
Yeah, no, and you're going up against one of the best secondaries in the entire league in the Broncos, and there's no better time to just give it off to your running back. You've got this stud first-round pick, one of the best players, a Heisman candidate last year in college. Ashton Genty has been incredible when he's given those chances to succeed. And you see up against the Broncos, last time they played, Geno Smith only threw the ball 26 times. I'd expect that number to drop. You know, you talk about what PS2 has been able to do. Riley Moss looked good in portions of that game up against the Commanders last week. This is the kind of game where Ashton Genty is going to get a lot of touches because of the fact that they're, looking at a rebuild right now, and you got it exactly right. A rebuild around Ashton Genty is where the Raiders might need to look for the future. I mean, he's the best player on this offense. He has the highest upside by a mile, and something like that is going to be something that I guarantee Sean Payton's looking at, Vance Joseph's looking at. this is going to be a fun game to watch when you're looking at Ashton Genty balling out.
Well, don't forget Brock Bowers when you say best player on the offense, because you still have him in play as well. And this is the interesting thing with Las Vegas. They've got Genty as a potentially elite talent and Brock Bowers as an elite talent.
Yeah, he's already elite.
It hasn't come together for this offense. And by the way, if you include sacks, because this is another reason why they shouldn't have been emphasizing the pass as much last month, Joey, is like they were sacked 6 times. So it was 33 pass plays and it was 25 runs. In a game that was 10-7, it never got away from them. On a night when it was windy, if there was a game where you should have had more runs than passes, it probably was a game like that, even though you did face some heavy boxes. That's one where you have to try to grind it out and get it and get it done and win with some power football. And the Raiders, I was surprised they didn't try to do that a little bit more. But again, that's probably part of the reason why Chip Kelly doesn't have a job in the NFL right now.
And you learn from your mistakes, and that's a mistake they probably learned from, and they're going to come out this weekend and maybe make some adjustments. So that's a great thing to watch. That's a great difference between that game and this one. Another difference is Max Crosby being listed as questionable. And I was actually talking about with Will Peterson yesterday about RJ Harvey taking on the brunt of the load in the run game for the Broncos. One thing we know about RJ Harvey is that he loves to bounce it outside. You know, you're not going to be able to do that against these DNs, especially a DN as great as Max Crosby. Him being listed as questionable, we don't know if he's out entirely yet. That's something that would be a huge positive, not only to the Broncos offense as a whole, but to specifically RJ Harvey, who, again, we see him bounce it outside all the time, but try to keep some of those runs up the middle, and maybe if you can bounce one out where Max Crosby would have been if he is out entirely for this game, that would be huge for the Broncos. But Max Crosby being listed as questionable is definitely something to watch. His impact on the defensive front for that Raiders team is immeasurable. One of the best defensive ends in the league, an edge rusher that, you know, most people try to replicate. You know, you talk about the best ones in the league. It's him. It's Myles Garrett. Nick Benito's up there. Huge loss if he does not play for the Raiders. And that's one of the X factors for this team. And I want to know from you, we talked about this a bit yesterday with Will too. Who do you think some of the X factors will be for the Broncos? Who are players to watch? I said Evan Ingram. You know, he had that great game up against the Commanders, but one game's lucky. Can you do it twice? Can you make it a habit? What do you think about that?
Well, I think Ingram, if they can open him up going forward in that way, he becomes an X factor in every game, because you heard all off season, Joker. How do we find the Joker in this offense? And I mean, even George Payton said it back at the Combine. Sean Payton's offense has become very hard to defend if you have that type of target in the middle of the field. And they haven't gotten Ingram uncorked until last week. And then, I mean, what a perfect time for him to have the kind of catch and run from him that we hadn't seen since the Cardinals game in the preseason, to do it there in overtime on the first possession. I mean, talk about Johnny on the spot right there. So not only him, but even getting Adam Troutman involved in the passing game as well. And I mean, if we really do a deep dive on Adam Troutman, he came into the league with some real nice pass catching bona fides coming out of college. So he does have deep in his toolbox, he does have that skill set to where if you can get him the ball in space, he can make some plays in a pinch for you. So I'd say both of those tight ends become X factors. And then to talk about RJ Harvey, who you mentioned, if you listen to Sean Payton talk about RJ Harvey on Wednesday, and he said, quote, "There's that saying, you haven't seen anything yet," unquote. And the sense you get from the Broncos about RJ Harvey is that there's still this really firm belief in him, even though it hasn't translated just yet. He's still picking up pass pro, obviously, but you talk about him still kind of bouncing things outside. He's averaging 3.8 yards a carry, and that's with 2 runs that have totaled 90 yards. He's got a 50-yard run and a 40-yard run. And those 2 runs alone represent nearly 1/3 of his rushing total overall. So that's why his success rate is extremely low, actually the lowest among ball carriers that have 75 plus rushing attempts so far this year. So the consistency hasn't been there for him, even though it was there for J.K. Dobbins. So how do you get that? How do you improve that? Well, I think you start by him identifying those creases when they flash open between the tackles and attacking them, and not necessarily bouncing them outside. He's got to just the vision for things at a pro level. It's got to improve just a little bit. So we'll see if maybe that starts to come together this week. They're gonna coach him up. You know, where you are as a young player isn't necessarily where you finish. I mean, there's a long history of young players developing, but at the same time, running back is usually one of the positions, Joey, where you develop into what you are pretty quickly within that first year and a half. So with RJ, I think the next few games are critical in determining where he's going to be and what type of player he's going to be.
Yeah, and then the coaching too, like having belief in him is great. He's a second-round pick. You should have belief in him. And I'm gonna be, if Sean Payton were to come up to that podium and say, we're a little bit nervous about RJ Harvey, that would terrify me. Of course he's not going to say that. He's got belief in his second-round pick, but coaching him up in December of his rookie season, how much of that can you do? I mean, he's had these months so far to show what he's capable of, and what he's capable of is 2 yards per carry and then a few where he breaks out for 30 plus yards. So it's not consistent enough, and consistent has been the word of the season. If I could put a word on this Broncos season, it would be inconsistent. So it's nothing out of the ordinary of what we've seen all year. RJ Harvey, not quite getting to where he needs to be, but again, going up against this Raiders team that has nothing left to play for this year. All they're playing for is a better pick. You get him the reps, get him some chances to gain some confidence, and just have that confidence be built, especially going into these last 4 games where they're going to be much, much tougher than this Raiders game. This is the easiest game that the Broncos will have for the rest of the year. And after that, it's every single game looks like a playoff game, basically.
I will say this, it's wild to hear inconsistent about the Broncos when they've won 9 in a row. I mean, I think I get what you're saying, because like their form within games is inconsistent.
Yeah.
The results have been as consistent as you get. It's the conundrum of the Denver Broncos this year, that within games, it's like it's all over the place. And yet week after week after week, they end up safe at home.
Yeah.
So it's that's why I think you have Riley Moss saying a couple of days ago, like this, like he doesn't want to be in close games, that they want to have a comfortable game for a change. Like I think, and I think that's actually a pretty common mood within the locker room this week, is like, let's have this game where we win it by a couple of touchdowns here. Let's actually, come out, mash the accelerator from the beginning, and let's kill a flea with a sledgehammer here.
Yeah, let's look good for the rest of the league. That's what I want to see. And that actually brings up the next topic that I wanted to talk about, which is the fact that I can't put it. I don't know what it's going to look like for Broncos country. What should Broncos country feel like if the Broncos win another 1-score game? If this ends up being a 10-7 win, a 14-10, a 17-14, one of these kinds of wins, Broncos country might just lose their minds a little bit. They might be a little bit scared. And I know that Bo Nix took the podium and he had a really long conversation and a really long quote, basically saying along the lines of, we're winning games and we shouldn't have to worry about what the media is saying. And I'm part of it. I've come out here and said after these small wins where I'm like, hey, let's get a real win. But Bo Nix was going out there and he said, we don't want to have to worry about what the media is saying. We're getting wins and we're feeling good. But what will Broncos country feel like, and what should they feel like if this is another close win?
I imagine Broncos country will have a complex about this game if it's a close game. And what should Broncos country feel? Well, I always say you should always feel happy about a win, and at the same time, there's going to be some understandable ambivalence. And I'll also say this: when they've won games inelegantly, there's been that mixed reaction within the locker room. I mean, I've heard words like unsustainable coming directly from players after some of these games. The only game I didn't hear anything like that was after the Chiefs game. That was the one where players told me, like, there's no qualifying a win like this. That they knew. Okay, they knew, right? This was a tough team. You know, okay, the record has been right around 500, but the Chiefs are still a team that fundamentally has a lot going for it.
And it's
They've
a
lost a
division
lot of
rival
close games.
too. Like
it's a rival. It was a huge game. They went punch for punch, and it came down to the wire. I mean, the Chiefs didn't play a bad game. I mean, really, there was one big mistake made by Patrick Mahomes, but it wasn't like the Chiefs went out there and crapped the bed in that game. But the other game, a lot of the other games in that run, I mean, you had Houston lost C.J. Stroud, and the Giants melted down at the end. The Jets, are a terrible team. I mean, really only against the Cowboys did you come out and play well. So you had, after games like the Giants game, after games like the Raiders game, the Texans game, and on the offense, often it was the offense kind of lamenting, oh, we can't do it that way. Like the Giants game, the offense saying like, oh, we can't just do nothing for 3 quarters. After last week, you had guys on the defensive side saying we can't have a game like that. And Vance Joseph yesterday was saying, was kind of lamenting the performance of his defense in that game. So I imagine, I think it's okay for Broncos country to be frustrated if it's another win against the Raiders, like the ones that they've had, most of the ones they've had in this winning streak, because I think that's only going to mirror what you're probably going to hear from the players in the locker room after the game. I mean, if the players feel that way, I don't see a reason why fans shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah, that's a great way to put that. Before we go on to our next segment, I want to get your score prediction for the game. I'm hoping, maybe I'm being too overzealous with this one, but I'm saying it's going to be a 21-10 win for the Broncos. What do you think the score prediction is going to look like?
I think it's going to be a comfortable win. I'm saying, but it'll be by 2 touchdowns. I've got 27-13.
I like that. I like that a lot. All right, let's move on to our last and final segment of the day and the week. Let's look at the poll that we put up for this week. How many games will the Broncos lose the rest of the way this season? You can see here, out of 4 options, 0 wins or 0 losses. Sorry, 19.6% of you said that. 1 more loss, 39.4% of you said that, leading the votes. 2 more losses, close with 35.5%, and then 3+ losses at 5.5%. Mace, how many more losses do you see for the Broncos this year?
1 or 2. I'm going to go with 1, but 2. I could see 2 because I think I've thought they would lose one of the Chiefs games this year. Now, when I made my season prediction, I had them losing the home game and winning in Kansas City. So I think the Chiefs probably still get them at one point. I think maybe it ends up being that Christmas night game. Although I think that may largely depend on whether the Chiefs are still in the race or not. If the Chiefs lose another game here between now and then, the Chiefs may actually be out of the race by Christmas night, and that may certainly affect their motivation by the time that game actually happens. I would not be surprised if the Broncos lose one of those 2 games at home to the Packers and Jaguars. And I think it does sort of come down to, eventually, when you live dangerously, when you teeter on the cliff week after week, eventually you fall off. The Packers have, they're 8-3-1. I mean, they've had some consistency issues as well, but they did go into Detroit on Thanksgiving and win. And the Jaguars are starting to play better football, more consistent football. We saw not too long ago when the Chargers went down there and the Jaguars pummeled them. And Jacksonville's right there with a very good chance to win the AFC South right now. It's actually in their hands to win the AFC South. They don't seem to have been affected very much by the loss of Travis Hunter. And very similar to the Broncos, at the quarterback position, it hasn't been as consistent as they'd like, but they're overcoming it. So the Packers-Jaguars is a 2-week stretch, and if you throw the Chiefs game in as well, it's a 3-week stretch, Joey, that may well be the toughest 3-week stretch of the season. And I think the Broncos probably lose at least one game there. So I'm gonna say one. I also do think the Patriots drop a game at some point as well, which is why I still think the Broncos are in pretty good shape to get home field advantage, even if they do lose a game. The Patriots have the Bills, they have the Ravens. I think they drop one of those. So I think 14, and there's a good chance 14-3 gets you the number 1 seed, one way or the other. So I'm going to go with one loss here the rest of the way for the Broncos.
I like that. I had one more loss too, but I actually had it coming at the hands of the Chargers. And before the season even started, I had the Chargers sweeping the Broncos in the season, and it looks like that could be a possibility. And it's funny that you said this could be the toughest 3-week stretch coming in, because before the season began, after week 2, after the loss to the Colts, I was saying the toughest 3-week stretch would be the Chargers, Bengals, and Eagles, and they ended up coming out of that with a 2-1 record, again, only losing to the Chargers. So could be a lesson repeating itself with the Chargers finishing off the Broncos with a loss. But what do you think about that one?
The Bengals kind of spoiled that one, Joey.
Yeah,
I think
they did.
Was with them coming in with Jake Browning. Even with Joe Flacco, it would have been a lot more interesting. The Broncos would have won, but I think the game would have been a little bit more fascinating than it turned out to be.
You're right. You're right. A few comments before we end. Shafiel Leotardo, definitely lose to the Chiefs and Packers. Jaguars, tough one, but I think they'll probably win. Raiders is a guarantee. Chargers is a tricky one. I can't call that one. I'm saying 12-13 wins for Denver, which will more than likely be enough to clinch the division. Julian Cuerdo, sorry if I am pronouncing that wrong. Maybe Chiefs because they need the wins. Chargers have no line anymore. Packers are hit and miss now. Jags offense comes out every full moon only. So, yeah. Maybe just Chiefs. And then 818, Callie Kane, be real. Broncos losing at least 2 to 3 more games. Maybe close games will fail. The close games will fail them down the stretch. So that's what Broncos country is looking like. But Mace, thank you so much for joining. I had a really fun time. Hopefully the Broncos can go out on Sunday and get this win. It will definitely be a lot of fun if we can be back here on Monday. I'll be talking with Danilo, and hopefully we can be talking about another win, a 10-game win streak for the Broncos on the cusp here, going out against the Raiders in Las Vegas, hoping for a blowout. Should be fun. Mace, thank you again so much for joining. It was lovely to have you. And everybody else, thank you for joining and watching. We will see you all on Monday. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. Bye, y'all.